Good morning
Good morning.
on this Thanksgiving Day. How's everybody doing? Good?
Blessed.
Good, good, good. I chose this portion of Scripture in the Old Testament because that's what I like. And I think that we all have so much to learn from the Old Testament that it's barely taught in churches today. And as long as I'm here, I'm always going to teach it. It comes from 1 Chronicles chapter 16. It has to do with David reinstating the sacrificial system, which was kind of taken away when King Saul. But first of all, I want to give you some background on Israel's first two kings. That would be King Saul and King David. Saul was the people's king. He wasn't God's idea. I mean, it was God's idea, but the people wanted a king. It's hard to explain. You know, sometimes God gives us what we want. We have to be very careful about that. Asking for things that we're not too sure of, because he will sometimes, to chasten you, he'll give you things that you might really not want. So in any case, the people wanted a king. God wasn't very happy with that. That they were outwardly rejecting God by asking for a king. He said to them, he said, you have me. Why do you need a king? And hence, Samuel anointed Saul as Israel's first king. He gave the people what they wanted. Saul was prideful, arrogant, and ungodly. He was a military guy. He did some good in the beginning, and militarily. Didn't last long, but he did not seek the Lord for guidance. He did not go to the Lord for guidance or prayer unless or until all of his carnal options were totally exhausted. And we know how that works out for us in our lives. If we would go to the Lord first and seek the Lord's face, we wouldn't have to worry about our own decisions. We really should learn from the Bible and not from ourselves, because almost always it's going to be wrong. It's not going to work out well. Saul did not give God a chance to help him because he refused to listen to him. He just thought that he knew how to do it, and he refused. He didn't pray. He didn't seek God's face. He was stubborn, rebellious, unfaithful, and unwilling to change. His rebellion and unfaithfulness to God were both active and passive. Actively, he intentionally went against God's will. Numerous times he tried to kill David, the anointed king of Israel, although he didn't realize that at the time. But he ignored God's will and God's law. His pride told him that he knew better than anyone. He didn't need anyone. If you go to 1 Samuel chapter 28, it teaches about that. And to top all that, he sought the guidance of a sorcerer or a witch, which was completely forbidden in the law of Moses. And even Saul reinstated that law before he decided to go find a witch, because Samuel had died, and he wanted to talk to Samuel. And once again, we have to be careful what we wish for in life, because not that the witch did not The witch did not bring Samuel back. God brought Samuel back from the dead to give Saul what he wanted. He wanted to hear what was going to happen, what he needed to do, and unfortunately for Saul, Samuel pronounced judgment on him and his sons, that they would be dead. The next day, they were dead. They were killed in battle. David becomes king now. Passively, he never sought the Lord's guidance. He didn't listen to the prophet. He didn't listen to the law. He didn't read the Bible. He didn't pray. He didn't build an altar to the Lord after his victories like Joshua did. If you go back to the book of Joshua, when God delivered him, when God delivered people into his hands, he built an altar and sacrificed to the Lord. There's so many small and seemingly meaningless things that we should do, but we choose not to. You know, should we help others in need? Of course we do. We do that here. We've been doing that here since the inception of the church. We need to choose biblically correct direction to go in, which is not necessarily our direction. Our human, carnal instincts are rarely in sync with what God's are. And we got to remember too, we can't fool God into thinking what we're doing is okay. So now that's enough about Saul, because a lot of people don't know too much about Saul. But David, different. Everybody knows King David. King David's story is much different. God called him a man after his own heart. David was a sinner, as we well know. He did lots of bad things. The difference was David always sought the face of God. Always came back to God when he got out of sync, when he got out of whack. He always went to God for guidance. He always went to him in prayer. There's multiple examples of him in the Psalms where he goes to God in prayer always. He was an example to God's people. This is what God wanted his people to be. What does this have to do with Thanksgiving and thankfulness? Well, I say that Saul wasn't thankful. He wasn't thankful to God for anything. Anything that was good in Saul's life, he thought he did. David was the exact opposite. He was thankful, he was grateful, and he always gave God the glory for everything that happened in his life, good or bad. Now I'd like to read a little bit of this 2 Chronicles, 1 Chronicles 16. It says, that day David first committed to Asaph and his associates this psalm of thanks to the Lord. Give thanks to the Lord. Call on his name. Make known among the nations what he has done. Sing to him. Sing praise to him. Tell of all his wonderful acts. Glory in his holy name. Let the hearts of those who seek the Lord rejoice. Look to the Lord and his strength. Seek his face always. Remember the wonders he has done, his miracles, and his judgments he pronounced. O descendants of Israel, his servant, sons of Jacob, his chosen ones. He is the Lord our God. His judgments are in all the earth. He remembers his covenant forever. The word he commanded for 1,000 generations. The covenant he made with Abraham and the oath he swore to Isaac. He confirmed it to Jacob as a decree, to Israel as an everlasting covenant. To you I will give the land of Canaan as the portion you will inherit. When they were but few in number, few indeed, and strangers in it, they wandered from nation to nation, from one kingdom to another. He allowed no man to oppress them, For their sake he rebuked kings. Do not touch my anointed ones. Do my prophets no harm. And it goes on, but I'll stop there. This is also, this particular portion of Scripture is in Psalm 105 and Psalm 78. You see a lot of the same lineage. It's the miracles. Psalm 105 is the miracles, is all the miracles, everything that God's done for His people from day one up until His present. It's the song. It's David's song of thanksgiving. He's indebted to God for what He's done and what He says He's going to do. It's a celebration of David successfully bringing the ark to where it belongs. As we know, he had a bad experience. The first time he tried to bring the ark, he didn't follow God's law. And an innocent man, a good man, died because of it. This is a great example of what David stood for. He stood for integrity. His integrity was impeccable. Devotion to the law and to God's people. It was very important. He was a great example to God's people. And we would all be wise to learn from David's trials, tribulations, and triumphs. God puts David and Saul together to show David what was right and what was wrong. Saul being wrong probably 99% of the time. He knew that David wasn't ready for what God had in mind for him. So he put him through trials. He put him through the fire. Just as he often does to us. Sometimes we think, why is this happening to me? You're going through a trial. It's God putting you through a trial. Like I said before, he's reestablishing the sacrificial system. It was very unimportant in the time of Saul, because Saul was not a man of God. He was carnal, and this is something that was put on David's heart by God. It was of epic significance to God. We have to remember that Saul was thankful for nothing. David is thankful to God for everything in his life, good and bad. He knows that God is in charge, that He's always in charge. There are four main elements in this song of thanksgiving. The first one's very important. Always remember what God has already done for you. That's what the psalmist wrote in 105. He told of all God's miracles and exploits, reminding them of them. Tell others what He has done for you. Your testimony is the best tool that you have. Tell them what the Lord has done for you. Not what He could do for them, what He's done for you. Use yourself as an example. David exemplified that to the highest. He was a great man. He was a great example. He was a great leader. Verse 8 says to call on His name. This is something we all have to do. David did it always. Saul did it never. If God seems far off to you, untouchable, never stop seeking His face. David never stopped seeking God's face. Maybe you're looking in the wrong place. If you're out of God's will, you're not gonna see His good. He's just not going to allow it unless you have to become in sync with God's will, and that's His word, by the way, for all of us in today's day and age. Matthew 7:7 says, "Seek and you will find." That's Jesus' words. We need to show others through our life, through our testimonies, and offering of gifts is something that we do here. Everyone gives themselves, they give their time, and they give their resources. Also, it's very important to do that. God commands us to do all them things. David was exalted by God to rule and reign over his chosen people, the people he chose to bring, eventually to bring the gospel into the world through them. They didn't do so good, but David remembered all of God's promises. That's what sets David apart, and something that we have to learn. God promised things. If we went back into the beginning of what I read, he said that he never forgets his covenants. Well, he doesn't forget his covenants, and David always held him to that. He knew if he did what God told him to do, that it would be reciprocal always, because God said it, and God is not a liar. He can't be a liar. This is clearly what God teaches in these scriptures through his covenants, through his prophets. He says, if you do this, I will do this. It's pretty simple. Even when God's will is not what we think is right, we must accept it. It's a hard one to swallow. Sometimes it doesn't look like, how could that be right? How could that be right? But you have to realize that God knows better. And we have to thank him for it. We have to be thankful. He knows what's best for our nation, our church, our government, and everything that goes on in our lives every single day, whether it be the littlest thing or heart surgery. We have to be like Elijah. We have to listen for that small, still voice, because he's not going to clobber you over the head with things. You need to pray, and you need to seek his face through the. This is how you seek his face, right here. And we have to remember, just like we need to listen for that small, still voice. Very difficult to do sometimes, because our voice is generally not, certainly mine isn't, very soft and still. So, in conclusion, David was a man who was always thankful for what God was doing in his life. What he had already done for him. He didn't think that he was above anyone. He didn't think he was better than any of the people in his that came underneath his power. He was the most powerful man in the world at this point. And we have to remember too. Remember that Jesus came to us as a descendant of the line of David, and one day soon he'll rule all the earth as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. His justice and strength will prevail forever. This should be comforting to all true believers and frightening to all who are not. Even though these promises were given to the Jews long ago, through his grace, we are grafted in to all the old covenant promises. We have joined the believing Jews, not replaced them. And for this, I'm truly, truly thankful for it. And as a prayer today, I think I'm going to read, this is also something, 1 Chronicles 29. This is David's prayer, so I'm plagiarizing his prayer today here. It says, "Praise be to you, O Lord, God of our father Israel, from everlasting to everlasting. Yours, O Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the majesty and the splendor, for everything in heaven and earth is yours. Yours, O Lord, is the kingdom. You are exalted as head over all. Wealth and honor come from you. You are the ruler of all things. In your hands are strength and power to exalt and give strength to all. Now, our God, we give you thanks and praise your glorious name. This is the great part about David. He says, "But who am I, and who are my people, that we should be able to give as generously as this? Everything comes from you, and we have given you only what comes from your hand. We're aliens and strangers in your sight, as were all our forefathers. Our days on earth are like a shadow without hope. O Lord our God, as for all this abundance that we have provided for building you a temple for your holy name, it comes from your hand, and all of it belongs to you. I know, my God, that you test the heart and are pleased with integrity. All these things have I given willingly and with honest intent, and now I have seen with joy how willingly your people who are here have given to you." So with that, I just want to pray and thank God. I'm so thankful that we have these scriptures that tell us, the prophecies in these scriptures that tell us exactly what's going to happen. We need to learn them, and we need to read them, and we need to understand them. Everything that's in the Bible, many things are playing out right now as we speak in Israel and around the world. Everything, the entire plan for existence is in this book, if you only take the time to read them.